Hi, I'm Shaylee, and I'm doing my theorist presentation on Albert Bandura. Right, so Albert Bandura was a Canadian-American psychologist, and he was evidently born in Canada. His parents were immigrants from Poland and Ukraine. During his life, and still today, he is a well-renowned psychologist, and he was ranked the fourth most eminent psychologist of the 20th century by a study published by the American Psychological Association in 2002. He was born in 1925 and lived to be 95 years old, dying in July of 2021. His most, I suppose, famous achievement is his development of social learning theory. Right. Then this next slide is just a picture of Albert Bandura, because I feel like a lot of the times it's helpful to put a face to a name, especially with all the theorists we're learning about recently. So, yeah, this is just what Albert Bandura looked like. Right. All right. Then the next slide is on social learning theory. So, in a nutshell, social learning theory is learning through example. In social learning theory, children learn through seeing and therefore repeating or imitating attitudes or tasks, etc. It emphasizes that children don't just learn through attempts or trial and error, but through imitating others. Later in life, he slightly revised his theories to connect other ideas, essentially having the best of both worlds, i.e., learning is behavioral and cognitive. Learning occurs both by observing behavior and observing its consequences. And although reinforcement is crucial for learning, it's not the only component to learning. Before his passing, Bandura's most recently revised version of social learning theory had 4 principles: attention, retention, production, and motivation. Attention requires that an observer is giving focus to behaviors, depending on factors like accessibility, relevance, complexity, perceived value, and the cognitive abilities of the observer. Retention requires that the observer is able to remember what they observed and call upon that information later. Production is the act of the observer repeating the behavior they observed later and getting feedback from other observers on the behavior. Motivation requires the observer to have a drive or a reason to repeat the behaviors they've learned based on reactions to the behavior. It's an important distinction to make that the social learning theory doesn't discriminate between those modeling negative behaviors and those modeling positive behaviors, meaning that if there is someone portraying an undesirable behavior, it is just as likely that a child will remember and imitate that behavior that it is the child will imitate an undesirable one. This is part of what makes this theory important. Knowing this theory ensures that people model positive behaviors for children, so they learn positive behaviors rather than the negative ones. All right, then moving on to the next slide, which is on the Bobo doll experiment. One of Bandura's most well-known achievements is the Bobo doll experiment. Bandura and his colleagues conducted the Bobo doll experiment in the 1960s in an attempt to see if social behaviors can be gained by seeing and repeating, or observation and imitation, to put it in different words. In the experiment, some of the children were shown a model being aggressive towards the Bobo doll, while others were shown a model not being aggressive with the Bobo doll, and other children were not shown any model. Following this, the children were provided with a situation that provoked aggression and taken to a room with some aggressive toys, like dart guns and a Bobo doll, and some non-aggressive toys, like a tea set and crayons. Overall, children who had seen the aggressive model were far more aggressive and imitative with the Bobo doll. This experiment showed that children are capable of learning behavior and aggression through observational learning. It also provides support to Bandura's greater social learning theory. Understanding the Bobo doll and Bandura's greater social learning theory are so important because now we know that as children grow up, they watch those around them for cues as to how to act and how to conduct themselves. When they're shown aggressive behavior, they'll model aggressive behavior. Not only is this important so we can make sure not to model aggressive behaviors for children, but it could also be important to remember when observing children. There's a chance that if a child is entering our care and acting out in a physically aggressive manner, they may have been seeing that behavior modeled at home or somewhere elsewhere. And if that is the case, it's important that we are able to cut that off as soon as possible and figure out a way to get them into a safer environment. Right. And these are a few pictures from the Bobo doll experiment. Right. Then this is a slide with like the MLA formatted, like cited sources from what I used to make the presentation. Right. Then that's it. Thank you.